Thank you. Hello, everybody. This is Oakwalker. We're here with another episode of Earth Medicine for the Soul, and I am very, very happy and relieved to see you all here joining us in this little discussion. So I'm here with my really close friend, Stronghorse, and we're going to move forward with our discussion that we left off on last week, which was about authenticity. Go.
Yeah, I think it's such an oblique subject that, and I think when somebody's listening to us and they're thinking, "Oh, authentic," well, I am authentic. I do what I want to do, or I
Yeah.
mean, that's it's an oblique term, and so I think what we should do maybe in this episode is talk about the reason we chose the shamanic path, and how that has led us into us discovering our own authenticity, and how all that plays out in our lives. So why don't you go a little bit into how you feel the connecting link into the natural world helps with that.
Well, it it's all it's all in all of the natural processes of the universe, right? So here I am in this universe and it does stuff. The universe just basically behaves the way it's going to behave, and my consciousness is involved in the process of co-creating all of our realities. So moving through all that, uh authenticity, or in not unauthenticity, would be that egocentric um, facade that I put on for years and years and years, just trying to fit in and trying to do what society told me I needed to do in order to be what they call successful, and and continuing to move through the world in a very, very non-functional way that was not authentic, because I wasn't drawing on the truth of the world around me. And for me to go into shamanism, which is one way of getting back into contact with the authenticity or the truth of the natural world, was a wildly eye-opening experience for me. Once I started approaching the world as an environment that had something to show me, rather than me having to show it what I was, then the whole thing turned around. We talked a little bit in the last discussion about what goes around comes around. Um, But when we start to talk about authenticity, now with concepts that shamanism uses, such as animism and understanding the truth of how watching how animals, for example, operate in the world, the same world that I'm in, that we have a tendency as humans not to pay any attention to. Um, this idea of what is successful seems to be predicated on the notion that the only way to be successful is to put yourself beyond nature or above it. And this is not feasible, because we are nature. We're made of nature. Nature is inherent to each and every one of us. And if we're going to try to pretend like that's not us, then we're going to naturally run into problems functioning appropriately on the planet. So what I got out of it wasn't just animism and shamanism, it was the ability to get over myself, to stop projecting this image of myself onto the planet, and to relax and allow the natural world to come to me, and to be able to receive that energy, information, um, just the feeling of what's going on out there, to be able to sense the kind of communications from a tree, for example, or even listening to my dog bark this morning. You know, most people presume that a dog's just going ba 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 ba, but that dog was talking. Her barks, each and every one of them, had a nuance and purpose, and none of them sound the same. Now, I don't speak dog, but I am absolutely convinced that that dog was speaking to other dogs and that vocalizing just as you and I do, only in dog. If I had not opened myself to the way nature operates in my body and in my mind and in my entire experience, that part of me that is what they call a pokpo. It's my physical body, it's my energy body, it's this layer of that energy body, and this one, and this one, and this one, all of that interacting with the the universe at large. It took this new form of what we're calling shamanism, of looking at the world, in order for me just to be able to sit back and experience things in a much different way. And that is what I think we're talking about when we talk about authenticity.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I got a little bit of kind of a expanded version of that. Um, I was grabbing some papers while you were speaking. There's something I read. I actually heard about this years ago, and just recently came back around to me, and so I, Googled it and pull it up. For me, and also while you were talking, I started thinking about, I developed my authenticity through primarily through Sundance. And
Mhm.
Sundance, I Sundance for 22 years. So it wasn't a lightweight commitment,
Right.
and and you go into that, for 3 days and 4 nights, essentially, you are totally in fifth dimension. And and so that you experience an expanded version of yourself that you
Yeah.
can't really experience in third dimension,
Mhm.
and so through that process, I began to see myself in an expanded capacity that I would never have been able to view if I hadn't made that kind of commitment.
Right.
And so, one of the things I think that when somebody ends up developing their authenticity, they begin moving away from a knowledge-based perception into a knowing-based perception.
Mhm.
And knowing in the knowledge societies is mainly considered to be an opinion. That's not the kind of knowing I'm talking about. I'm talking about an art form that you develop through commitment and discipline and practice. And here's the best example of knowing that I can give you, particularly when we're talking about the natural world. There was a guy, and his name was Lawrence Anthony, and he and his wife bought a bunch of land in South Africa and developed a game reserve. He was he like that was his what he I guess his fate. That's what he decided he wanted to do, and they moved there and they bought the land and they fenced it off. And there was this group of elephants that were scheduled for elimination because they were rogue, and they were trashing the villages and going through people's gardens and stuff. And so he talked to the authorities and convinced them to allow him to get them and bring them on the reserve. So they did that. Well, over the years, he experienced a bonding with the matriarchal elephant. And they got to the point where she would come up and extend her trunk to him, and they called him the elephant whisperer but he said I was more like an elephant listener.
Right.
And so anyway, so he saved these elephants, and and so when he died, I think somewhere around 1992,
Aw.
and 2 days after he died, these elephants showed up. They'd walked 12 hours to come and honor this guy for saving them. And they come back every year on the anniversary of his death and honor him, regardless of where they are. And even in the article, the people says, we just don't know how they know. Well, they know. Just they just
Yep,
know.
they just do.
It's not
And it's
hard.
right.
You
And
know,
it's not just
it's
thinking, it's thinking, feeling, intuiting. And it's all about it's your whole body doing this thing. That reminds me of a
well, and it's and there's yeah, it and they're connected into the knowing of Mother Earth.
yes. Yeah.
And so that once you're and so that's what shamanism for me did. It connected me into this force field
Yeah.
of knowing
Yeah.
that led me into places that I would have never considered going ever without making this commitment. And
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as I stepped onto the path, I mean, I family and friends are
Right.
they're gone,
Yeah.
and
They're still gone.
he's yeah. I was in a I was in a Verizon store somewhere like that. I can't remember where it was, this is kind of one of those lessons when man, you just cannot say whatever you want to say whenever you want to say it. This salesman goes, "We've got a special that for family and friends, you can call free for blah blah blah." And I looked at him, I says, "I don't have any family or friends." And I guess he got went blank, like what?
Excuse me.
And I was like, you really need to manage your tongue, dude.
Right.
But I think this knowing, I
Hmm.
think this is going to become the biggest subject
Yeah.
for
Because
mankind over the future, because that it's knowledge is based on linear thinking, so it's going to end. It has all knowledge has a beginning and an ending. And most knowledge that people work with, they're out set out to find out if their conclusions are correct. You
yes.
know, I
And
mean,
they will be for
that's
a
the way
while
they
until
test.
the next one comes along.
That's right. So knowing is a completely different deal because it can change in an instant.
Hmm. With a new piece of
And the
information.
knowing can be, and you know that it did, and it takes you into an elevated sense of beingness. And I think once you take that on, you find that you're an intimate, integral part of something way bigger than you could possibly imagine. You just can't wrap your head around it.
Hmm.
And you don't need to wrap your head around it. It's just a matter of accepting it as being there and you being a part of it. And when that happens, you assimilate into it, which takes us back to the what we were talking about in the last session about acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Acts of kindness. If that's what that guy went out and said, I'm going to save these elephants. I don't care what it costs. I'm going to get them here and I'm going to save them. And that led to this incredible story that
Uh-huh.
you and I are now sharing that says, wow, man, and they come back every year. They know that this
Yeah.
is the anniversary of death. How is that possible? Well, they know.
They just do. But
They
because
just do.
yeah, well, or we have forgotten.
Right.
Okay. A guy told me that when he was in Okinawa, they had some problems with the cobras there, and some guy killed two cobras in his house, and for the next 3 days, cobras walked past that house or slithered past that house two by two, for 2 days to acknowledge the fact that they'd lost a member of their community. Um, go back to there was this huge, huge tidal wave in Thailand, and it took out a lot of people, a lot of tourists too. And after it was all over, there are two stories that stood out for me. And they said how many the national park, which had elephants and tigers and everybody, all kinds of, animals they were trying to preserve. They said, well, how many animals died? And the answer came back, none. they all they all went uphill.
They got
And
out of there.
they got
Yeah,
the hell out of there, right? And so
right.
none of the animals died, but the people, when the tidal wave, so tidal waves, they suck out the ocean a lot before, like any wave, it sucks out the
Talking
ocean.
about
And
tsunamis,
yeah, tsunamis, right?
right?
They suck out the ocean a lot, and then all that water comes back in, right? That's how waves operate, like that. But these guys, so we've forgotten this. I mean, we've forgotten how to tune in to what nature is doing and how it feels and what that universal force is. The force be with you. What the universal force is trying to tell us all the time. And these people are out there picking up fish, going, look at all these fish abandoned. This is cool. Look at, we can walk a
Right.
half a mile out. Isn't that cool? Let's go walk out there. When in fact, if they had that residual sense of being a part of nature, they would have been running uphill as fast as they could go, like the animals. And humans, we have allowed ourselves to forget all of that. I even think we used to be telepathic and communicated with the animals just fine, but we've forgotten all that.
Right.
And you could
Right.
say, in a way, that was the leaving the Garden of Eden right there. That would have been the fall. How whatever snake caused that to happen or whatever, I don't care. But the fact that we no longer understand nature to the effect that it's a disaster when a hurricane comes by. It's a disaster when a tsunami happens. This is a forgetting, I think, that humanity has had. And I don't know how we're going to survive without getting that back.
We're not. Oh no, I totally agree with you. I mean, and I think the biggest tragedy is, is that we keep wasting all these resources and spending vast sums of money to prove the knowledge out when in fact knowing would just take you there like that and it don't cost anything.
Right? No, I have to do it,
You
dream
know,
into that a little bit and then tell me what you see.
right, right. It's so easy and it's so reasonably priced. I'll
Yeah.
share with you another personal story like that, very same thing. When I used to hang out in a little town called Mismaloya,
Mhm.
where they filmed Night of the Iguana.
Mm.
And they also filmed Predator at this place up at the end of the road that goes through this little village. And so they would take these tourists, load them on buses, and take them up there, and they take them into this little. There was a bar and a waterfall and all that, and then they put them back on the buses. So anyway, me and this friend of mine are walking up the road, one afternoon, and we come around the corner, and here all these buses have stopped and cars and everything in the middle of the road is this python, right? And it's all coiled up, and the Mexicans are freaking out, and the Japanese got their cameras going and stuff. Well, Harley had given me a hand sign that if you ever run into a reptile, this is what you want to use. It's a shamanic sign. So I thought, well,
Uh-huh.
this will be fun. So, so I walk up and get within about 10 feet of this python, crouch down. He turns and hisses at me, and I gave him my little hand sign, and he blinked. And I telepathically said, I'm going to get you out of here. And that my friend went and got a big tree limb. And so I scooped him up, took him over, put him in the jungle, and off he went off up the hill. And the Japanese were thrilled because they got a great thing to tell their friends and to get their pictures. But here's the kicker. 2 days later, I'm hiking up this mountain and I hear all this noise and I stop, and here comes that python down through the jungle to see me.
Hmm. Just to say
And
hi.
he stopped. Yeah, he stopped. Well, to thank me. And,
Uh,
and he stopped right in the end. He looked at me, and I connected in with him, and he was thanking me for saving his life. I
hmm.
said, "You're welcome," and then he just went on his way.
Yeah,
So, that happens. Then there's another example of kindness. You
yeah,
know, it's just, I just it wasn't like I had anything to derive from that other than saving the snake.
yeah.
And I wanted to try my hand tie. We'll have to say, I wonder if this works. Gotta hope it does. I'm gonna have these guys are gonna get a great picture. Hey, look at the Washichu. He's all wrapped up by a python. Get the
Somebody
video
ought
out.
to, yeah. Get the camera in
Okay, well, that didn't work. Oh my God.
That's nice when it
Uh,
works.
yeah. So anyway, I think that, but I think the key to all that is that, there's when you when you have this feeling of being part of this larger force field,
Hmm.
man, honestly, God, I can't think of anything better than that.
It's like night and day, really. Um, th- so not having access to that force field is a condition that I often refer to as sleepwalking, where, and this is actually, I'm starting to kind of get tired of this, but now that I work with a whole new group of people, and just about everybody is what I would call a sleepwalker because they're not paying any attention at all to the environment that they're in. They are so self-absorbed that they don't even know that I'm in the room. And they're supposed to know that I'm in the room because you have to communicate with other people in order to get the job done properly. Everybody has to know where everybody else is. And they don't, and they walk right through me. They just, and they're not bumping me out of the way like, get out of here. It's like they don't even know I'm there. It's like, whoosh. I I wonder I wonder about that because I'm not sure I was ever completely like that I was so wrapped up in my own internal self, no, little selfness that I really wasn't paying any attention to anything else in the world. I mean, I've always been able to, send people a smile, for example. And that gets back to that, when you start being kind to people and they're like, what's your problem? People that give me dirty looks because I'll send them a smile instead of, sending them a scowl. But at least I know they're in the room, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that without getting into a long dialogue about what's up with those folks. I mean, I think when people are experiencing a great deal of pain, they become oblivious to everything because they're trying to escape their pain.
uh-huh, maybe, yeah.
They're withdrawn and they withdraw from everything.
That's
And
the
so,
word.
they're almost non-reachable, because if they're terrified of having to feel that pain again,
Yeah,
and so, that's why, any spiritual path worth its salt has got to have shadow work involved with it,
yeah.
you know, because you have to be able to say, all right, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be an adult, I'm going to get rid of this stuff,
Hmm.
because the payoff, I think possibly the payoff here could be huge,
Yes.
and so you start balancing gain and loss, and you think, I'm willing to go through this honest, exploration of my own self inventory
Uh-huh.
and find out what I got to let go of so that I can. But the people that are truly in pain because they just don't think they have any other choice,
Hmm.
um, are hardest to get to, and I
Yeah.
think that that's the key is that they have to understand you do have choice. You
Yeah.
don't have to obsess over or become addicted to the pain.
Yeah.
You have choice. You can just dismiss it. You can let go of it. You can say, that was a bad experience. I don't need it anymore.
Hmm.
I'm done with it, or write it on a piece of paper and burn it,
Yeah.
or however that works for you. But
Yeah.
it's got to be done. You got to let go of it because you got to make room for something else to come in. And, we're talking about the force field and, animals knowing and all of this stuff. But, at the end of the day, it's God.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, in its many forms, it's God wanting to know itself,
Yeah.
and
And
so that creates a force want to examine itself. And as a human, you're like, well, I'm going to be part of that. I
yeah.
want to, I'm going to volunteer to be part of that, man, because that sounds like a great gig, you
Right.
know?
I want to join that party.
Yeah. And it is a great gig. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I love feeling like I'm part of the universe and the whole universe, not just, I mean, the planet's great. There's good planets are hard to find, as Oscar used to love to say. And that's true. And this is a great planet we've got here. And it's really, whether if mankind doesn't survive, the planet's going to be fine. It's just, it'll figure something else out. It'll keep doing its planetary thing. But I love being a part of all that. I love feeling like I I can just transverse my awareness and attention anywhere into the universe because of that force that ties everything together. And that is what that another way to call that is God. But getting back to the sleepwalking people, it's tragic. And as a healer, I know that two things. Well, I know that I could help those people get over themselves and get out of that cauldron of pain that they seem to be constantly in and carrying around for themselves. But I can't make them want to do that. And it's a double-edged thing because they don't want to admit that they need healing because that would be hard. And then they would have to admit that they're not well. And so you can't just go snap out of it, like like I've often wanted to, because
Right.
it isn't gonna help anything. There's that thing again.
Yeah, I think, I mean, each of us, you and I probably have different stories, yet pretty similar about how we change courses for ourselves, but and I mean, I was tricked into it. I mean, it's
Mm.
just no doubt about it. I was tricked. I mean, I wasn't looking for nothing. It just all of a sudden next thing in the middle of a sweat lodge and like, oh my God, what's going on here? And but I felt different, so I had to pay attention to that,
Yeah,
and
something
you
happened.
know, yeah, something happened, so I had to own that. I had to, and it sparked my curiosity, and then I thought, well, and I love adventure, so I thought, well, I'm going to explore and see
Yeah.
what comes of this, and I still wasn't looking for anything, but I thought, well, this will be fun, see what's up. Um, so but that's that. I think what you're talking about, there's a really great metaphor for the whole culture as a whole. You know,
Hmm.
um, everybody's caught up in this distraction of uh, accumulating physical sustenance in order to avoid dealing with the real soul essence of their own soul,
Uh-huh.
because they haven't really been given permission to do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't, there's just not that many. situations out there where people would go, well, this is interesting. And how do you do this? Or how does
Uh-huh.
this, where do you go to get into this? Because this sounds like something I could do. We'll probably do that on our website. We'll give some places for references to where people
Yeah,
can
try this, try
tag
that.
people and yeah, try this, try that, and in different modes. But that being said, there's still an amazing group of people on this planet that are going there. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like I started going to Mexico when I was 14, mainly to Puerto Vallarta, and Puerto Vallarta was just a little sleepy fishing village, no traffic lights, just now it's a megatropolis,
yeah.
but there's almost a massage parlor, a legitimate massage parlor, on every corner, you know, and it just almost seems like it happened like that. And there's a huge ecological movement down there to protect the land and
Hmm.
protect the ecology. There's a lot of really sophisticated, knowledgeable, educated kids that are, taking charge of all of that. And that just seems, it almost feels like that happened overnight. And to me, every time I look at that, I think it's emblematic of the fact that, if you go back, I don't know, whatever, 50 years or something, we're blowing up bombs to see what it would do, on the planet. Let's blow up an
Right?
atom bomb, see what happens. Great
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, we'll be important, don't you think? Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
be huge, you know. And now
Sure.
that just seems like just like a dystopian nightmare, crazy. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that person would be considered to be nuts. And so the tide's turning
That's it.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I think it's really moving in the right direction. We live in this little time capsule that on a linear basis, and we think, well, let's pick up the speed a little. but,
Right?
but yeah, we're just like a blip on the screen, man.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's hard for us to assimilate that in terms of how fast this is going and where it's going. But
Hmm.
I mean, we have every right to be optimistic, I think, don't you?
Yes, I do. And it's that I'm glad you brought us around to that because it is actually time to go again. And that's an excellent place for us to leave off in that there is hope. And I agree. And you just stated it very, very well, in my opinion, that the more the further we go into this and the longer I live, basically, the more I'm seeing that this is actually becoming a good trend in the world. And as the unsustainability of our old ways becomes obvious, people are picking up and coming around to the awareness that everything is connected. So that's
And I
what I've,
think people want to be authentic.
yes, exactly.
I really think people want to be authentic. They really want to understand what that is, and they want to live it. They're sick and tired of the illusion and the in
Uh,
the in the mask and the craziness that they've been forced to perform. So,
and there you have
all
it.
right.
All
Well,
right.
another one in the bucket, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Stronghorse. I thoroughly appreciate your friendship, your attention, and your wisdom and smarts. And so, thank you, everybody
Okay,
else, all of our faithful listeners. Want to say good night?
good night.
Good night.